Hello children, welcome to our science session. Let's continue our chapter 10, reaching the age of adolescence. In the last session, we have discussed about various changes that happens during the period of adolescence. We have discussed about during adolescent period, there will be a sudden increase in height. So why this sudden increase in height happens? Because during puberty, the hormones, they signal the body to grow faster. This sudden increase in height occurs in boys at the age of 13 years and in girls at the age of 11 years. Then we have discussed about change in the body shape. Both the boys and girls, there is an increase in muscle growth. This brings the change in the body shape. And for example, boys shows faster increase in the muscle tissue and girls have faster increase in the fat tissue. This is a difference between boys and girls during adolescence in case of change in the body shape. And in boys, there will be a broader shoulder happens during adolescent period, and in girls on the other hand the increase in fat deposition, that fat moves from the middle part to the upper and lower body, which give the curvier appearance in girls during adolescence period. Then we have discussed about change in voice at puberty. Voice box, which is otherwise called as larynx, they begins to grow and boys develop larger voice box. That is why it is prominently seen in the boys. On the other hand, in girls, larynx is hardly visible because of its small size. This leads to the boys have a larger, deeper voice, that is, voice becomes hoarse, and in girls, they have high-pitched voice because of larynx is small in size in girls. Then next change we have discussed about increased activity of sweat and sebaceous gland. During puberty, the secretion of sweat gland and sebaceous gland, otherwise called as oil gland, increases. This leads to have many young people get acne and pimples on the face at this time because of the increased activity of sweat gland and sebaceous gland in the skin. Then we have discussed about this glands. If you see, there are two types of glands, exocrine glands and endocrine glands. Exocrine glands are glands which have duct or tube to carry out their secretion. For example, glands like sweat gland, oil gland or sebaceous gland and salivary gland, they have duct or tube to release their secretion. These are all examples of exocrine glands. On the other hand, endocrine glands, they do not have duct or tube to carry out their secretion. These endocrine glands are also called as ductless glands. As they do not have duct or tube, their secretion, that is endocrine glands, they secrete chemical secretion, what we call that as hormones. They release these hormones directly into the bloodstream. Why? Because they do not have duct. Then next change is development of sex organs. That is, in males, the reproductive organ testis, it is fully developed and it start producing sperms. And on the other hand, in girls, the ovary, female reproductive organ ovary get matured and eggs will be released during puberty. Now, let's continue about the next change that happens during adolescent period. That is, adolescents, they reach mental, intellectual and emotional maturity. Intellectual, they become very intelligent. This is because adolescence is a period of change in a person's way of thinking. That is, they think and This leads to more intellectual, and adolescents are more independent than before, and they are very self-conscious. And intellectual development also takes place. That is why they spend considerable time on thinking. And in fact, it is often the time in one's life when the brain has a greater capacity of learning. That is, children, this adolescent period is a time period in one's life where your brain has the greater capacity for learning. That is why you also now you're at the beginning of adolescent period, so you can utilize this change. That is, your brain has the greater capacity for learning. You can utilize and improve your intellectual ability sometimes. But this adolescence, they may feel insecure because during adolescent period these many changes happens in their body and mind, so they may feel insecure. But as you know that we have learned about the changes occur in adolescent period, so there is no reason to feel secure. These changes are very natural. It is a part of your growing up. And next change, it is the development of secondary sexual characters. For children, now we are going to learn about the development of secondary sexual characters during adolescent period. And already we have learned that the male reproductive organ testis and the female reproductive organ is ovaries, and they produce gametes. Male reproductive organ, they produce male gametes, which is called as sperms, and female reproductive organ, they produce female gametes called as ova or egg, isn't it? And during this adolescent period, the secondary sexual characters, like in girls, breast begins to develop, and in boys, they begin to grow facial hair, that is mustaches and beard. These, as these features, it helps to distinguish the male from the female. They are called secondary sexual characters. So before adolescent period, both boys, all the features of boys and girls look similar. But once they attain puberty, that is secondary sexual characters in boys and girls helps to identify, distinguish the male from the female. So these characters are called as secondary sexual characters. So in both boys and girls, hair grows under the arms and in the region above the thigh, or we can call that as pubic region. So now, what are secondary sexual characters? At puberty, some changes that occur in both males and females help to distinguish from each other. The features that develop in them are called as secondary sexual characters. So what are secondary sexual characters in boys? In boys, some secondary sexual characters are facial hair growth, that is mustaches and beard, growth of hair on the chest, under the arms and pubic region. And what are the secondary sexual characters in girls? Some secondary sexual characters in girls are development of breast, growth of hair under the arms and the pubic area. Now, these changes, whatever we have learned till now, how this changes happens, what initiates the changes that happens in a human being at puberty. The onset of puberty is controlled by hormones. What are hormones? Hormones are chemical substances which are secreted by endocrine glands, isn't it? There are various endocrine glands are present at various places in our body, and the changes which occur at adolescence are controlled by some of the hormones. So children, hormones are chemical substances which are secreted by endocrine glands. Otherwise, we can call that as ductless glands or endocrine system, one and the same. And this especially, this secondary sexual characters in male and females are brought about by the hormones, sex hormones, namely the male hormone are called as testosterone. Children, what is a male hormone? Male sex hormone. Male hormone called as testosterone. It starts uh, released by the testes on the set of puberty. So testes, we can call that as one of the endocrine gland which release hormone called as testosterone. And because of this hormone called as testosterone, it causes the changes in the voice. For example, facial hair, growth of facial hair, growth of hair on the chest, under the arms and pubic area. And so you can see the testes are the glands which are present in males. Secretion of testes, what we call that as testosterone. The secretion of testes, that is the hormone secreted by testes. Testes is an endocrine gland. Produced by hormone produced by testes is testosterone. What is the use of testosterone? It helps the testes to produce sperm, and also it helps to develop secondary sexual characters in males. And the same way, once the puberty is reached in girls, the ovaries begin to produce female hormone, what is called as estrogen, and which makes the ovary to release egg as well as to develop some secondary sexual characters in females like breast development, growth of hair under the arms, in pubic areas, etc. And the breast development, that is the milk secreting glands, or what we call that as mammary gland, they develop inside the breast. So the production of these hormones, how this male sex hormone and female sex hormones, these are under the control of another hormone secreted from an endocrine gland called as pituitary gland. So pituitary gland is also an endocrine gland. Got children? Now again in females, the ovaries, the endocrine glands ovaries are present in females. They secrete the female sex hormone called as estrogen that helps in the production of egg and the development of secondary sexual characters in females. And other than this sex hormone, which are produced by some endocrine glands, there are various other endocrine glands are present in our body. We will be learning in the later session. Okay, children. Now, till now in the session, we have learned that the onset of puberty and maturity of reproductive parts are controlled by hormones. Hormones are the secretions of endocrine glands which are released directly into the bloodstream, because endocrine glands, they do not have duct or tube to carry out their secretion. That is why these hormones are directly released into the blood. Then pituitary glands, they secrete hormones which include growth hormone and which control the other gland such as testes, ovaries, thyroid, adrenal, etc. These about this session we have learned only about testes and ovaries. The remaining endocrine glands like thyroid gland, adrenal gland, pituitary gland, everything we will be learning in the later session. Now, in this session, we have learned that testosterone is a male hormone that helps in the sperm production as well as the development of secondary sexual characters in males. And in female, estrogen is a female's hormone that helps in the egg production and the development of secondary sexual characters in females. That's all for this session. Thank you.